Alright, so last Friday we wrote our short little analysis of what Mark Antony had to say in Acts 3, and I told you that the reason we were doing that is because we were about to start a unit on persuasive writing and persuasive speaking. And so that's what today's lesson is sort of an introduction to, is persuasive writing and persuasive speaking. Mark Antony in his speech, he mentioned several ways, or several reasons why he thinks that killing Caesar was unjustified. Several different ways that he tries to appeal to his audience, tries to appeal to the commoners that are there, that are watching Mark Antony give his speech. What are a few of the things that he says? Just throw some stuff out there that you remember. Mark Antony, the thing that we wrote on Friday, when he's speaking to the commoners.
Kind of talked about how Bruce was so noble.
Okay, so he's sort of trying to undercut what Brutus had to say about himself and people's opinions of Brutus by saying, but Brutus was noble. And he says all these things even though it doesn't really match up with what he believes should happen. Okay?
He was proving that Caesar wasn't ambitious.
He was trying to prove that Caesar was not ambitious, and how does he do that? What are some of the facts that he gives?
He offered him the crown 3 times and he denied it.
Okay, so that's fact-based. He offers him the crown 3 times, and he denies it 3 times. That's a fact that supports his argument. Is that what you were about to say, Daniel?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, he just kind of kept taking up for Brutus, and like, well, Brutus is wise enough, and then you got Caesar over here not even wanting the throne or anything, so I might as well follow Brutus and what he's trying to do.
Right. He also, obviously, who doesn't like to get free money or free land, obviously, so he uses that to his advantage whenever he reads Caesar's will. If that cuts off, just don't pay attention to it. I'll bring it back up in a second. So he gives them money, he gives them land out of Caesar's will. Obviously, that's used to persuade the people. All these sorts of things that he does, all these sort of different things that he says, are different ways of him trying to appeal to his audience. And whenever you are trying to, I told you we're going to write papers where you pick a position on something, whatever issue you decide to debate, whatever issue you decide to talk about, you'll pick a position, you'll defend it. And so we need to first know, before we write those papers, we need to know different ways that we can appeal to the reader, or if we're speaking like Mark Antony was, because we're going to have our debates, different ways that we can appeal to the listener. So I say all that to say this. When I say the name Aristotle, what comes to mind? Aristotle.
Greek.
And okay, Greek. What else?
Clothes?
Philosopher. Cool. What else? What'd you say, Daniel?
I thought some clothes girl brand or something.
Oh, you're probably Aeropostale. Probably what you're thinking. That's an honest mistake.
Wow.
Honest mistake. Yeah, Aeropostale
Wow.
clothing brand. Okay, Aristotle was a Greek philosopher. Is one of the things he did, but he's what's called a polymath. Anybody? It's a weird term. Does anybody know what a polymath is? Anybody? Okay, Aristotle was what we would probably say he was a thinker. He was a philosopher. So he wrote books on philosophy. He was a mathematician. He wrote books on math. He was an artist, a sculptor. He would write books and things on art techniques. He was a historian. He would have done science, chemistry, everything you could do. In ancient Greece, you didn't necessarily go to school for one thing. I'm going to school to study math. That wasn't what you did. You went to school, and when you went to school, you learned everything. So that's what Aristotle did. He's what's known as a polymath. He's a brilliant man. To this day, like a lot of times spell check won't correct, like on a computer, just to give you an example of how important he is. Like on spell check, if you misspell somebody's name, they don't know people's names. But if you misspell Aristotle's name, it'll correct it for you. Like that's
Whoa.
just sort of to give you some idea. This is a very important man. We're talking about a very important person in history. But one of the things that Aristotle studied, was logic and rhetoric. Rhetoric is simply a word for the art of persuasion, is what it is. And he developed these 3 ideas for whenever you're speaking, whenever you're writing persuasively. These 3 different ways that you can sort of, he calls them his persuasive appeals. Ways for you to appeal to your audience. I had a Prezi that I was going to show in a PowerPoint, but I couldn't get them to work on this. So I just found this website just off the spur of the moment, and it'll serve our purpose pretty well. So we're going to do this, and then in a second we'll get in groups, and we'll look at some magazines and try and pick out some of these sort of things here in a minute. But the first one, come on, is known as ethos. They're known as ethos, pathos, and logos, which are Greek terms. They're kind of confusing, I understand. But once you sort of differentiate between the 3 of them, it it's pretty easy to tell which is which. So ethos, or the ethical appeal, means to convince an audience of the author's credibility or character. Whenever you're watching television and you see advertising for a medicine come on, who's the person a lot of times that's telling you about the medicine?
Someone that takes it.
Someone that takes it, okay? So that would be an appeal to ethos. What else?
Doctors.
A doctor, that's what I'm thinking of specifically, a doctor. Ethos works on the idea that the person telling you, trying to persuade you something, they can be trusted. If there's somebody, whether or not they're a doctor, a lot of times if you look at the fine print, paid actor, not a doctor. But they're just trying to fool you, I guess. If he's wearing a lab coat, he's got a stethoscope on, he's probably got a clipboard and some glasses, and he's telling you to take this medicine, that this medicine has been tested and proven so many times. If you're sitting there, and you're trying to think, man, I got this problem in my back, I need this medicine. Here's a doctor. Oh, he seems to know what he's talking about, even though he's a paid actor. But he looks like he knows what he's talking about. That's an appeal to ethos and might get you to buy that product. Okay? So, that's our first one we're going to be dealing with is ethos. And probably the easiest way to think of it would be the doctor in commercials. A lot of the ways that we're familiar with these things are from commercials and things of that sort. Because that's how we see most of these most often in our lives. Pathos, number 2. Is the emotional appeal. It means to persuade an audience by appealing to their emotions. Authors use pathos to evoke sympathy from an audience, to make the audience feel what the author wants them to feel. The common use would be to draw pity of an audience. When you think of pathos, you think of emotion, pathos, pathetic. That's sort of a link that you can make with the words to help you remember it. Whenever I'm watching television, because I always have to change the channel because I can't stand watching it because I'm a softie. The commercials like the pets, and they're like, and they're like abused and stuff, and that Sarah McLachlan song comes on, and it's so sad. The little dog's shaking, and that's trying to make you feel pity. That would be an appeal to pathos. Those people are trying to get you to give money to their worthwhile organization because they're trying to engage your pity. They're trying to engage your emotions. So we have ethos, which is trying to engage your trust in the person saying it. Doctor wearing a lab coat. Pathos, the sad song and the dog looking at you and shaking and his bones are showing. That's an appeal to your emotions. That would be pathos. So those are 2 of our appeals. And the last one is called logos, which is the appeal to logic. The best way I can illustrate this would just be facts and figures, numbers, actual verifiable data. So when we look at Mark Antony's speech that I had you analyze, one example of logos that he uses would be what Sonorous gave us. Sonorous' example. Whenever Caesar comes back, Mark Antony offers him the crown 3 times. That's a fact. And 3 times he denies it. That's 0 for 3 if you're looking at it just in sports numbers. He's 0 for 3 on trying to accept the crown. That's a fact that he could cite in his speech as an appeal to logos. Logos, logic is the best way for you to remember that. So yeah, like it says up here, to use logos would be to cite facts and statistics, historical, literal analogies, events, things like that. So down here at the bottom of this website, which I actually looked into this, it's actually going to be pretty useful for us, because we're eventually going to write our own papers, and whenever I grade your papers, and whenever I grade your speeches, your debates, what have you, I'll grade them on these 3 criteria. Do you have the ability to use these 3, ethos, pathos, and logos in your argument? Because whenever you're writing your things, whenever you're writing your speeches or you're writing your papers, whenever you sit down and you find these different ways to argue, you find, hey, I have facts I can throw in right here. I can try to appeal to somebody's emotion right here, make them feel a certain way, maybe make them feel happy, make them feel sad, what have you. It makes your writing more convincing. It makes your speech more convincing. And the end goal of any persuasive writing, persuasive argument, is just to get people to think the way you do. So we're going to try and use these 3, bam, 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 ethos, pathos, and logos in our writing and our speeches. What we have right here are text examples of each of these. It's probably too small for you to read unless I can make it bigger. I bet I can. I'll hold to that. Somebody want to read this first one for us? We'll do it this way. Yeah, example of ethos. Let me see if I can get it. Somebody that can. Is that pretty big? Can you read that? Everybody, for the most part, read that. All right, somebody read that first one, ethos, for us. This would be from President Obama's acceptance speech before he was elected the first time at the Democratic Democratic Convention. Somebody read that first one for us. Somebody.
You want to?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. That worked.
I will end this war in Iraq responsibly and finish the fight against Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan. I will build our military to meet future conflicts, but I will also renew the tough, direct diplomacy that can prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons and curb Russian aggression. I will build new partnerships to defeat the threats of the 21st century, terrorism and nuclear proliferation, poverty and genocide, climate change and disease, and I will restore our moral standing so that America is once again the last best hope for all who cared of the cause of freedom, who longed for lives of peace, and who yearned for a better future.
Okay, so this website gives us this speech as an example of the persuasive appeal ethos, which is about establishing trust in the person who speaks. You know this just from watching him speak since he was elected 5 years ago the first time, seeing pictures of him. President Obama's a pretty charismatic guy, isn't he? He's kind of a smooth talker. He's easy to trust. He's on ESPN filling out brackets, and the next day he's at the United Nations giving talks about nuclear warheads. He's sort of a, for lack of a better term, he's a cool dude. And in this speech, he's giving you ideas of ways he's going to make the country a better place. Ways that, to the person listening at the time, this time it'd be someone who's going to elect him. He's trying to persuade people to choose him in the election. He's giving ways that he can make the country better. So it's trying to establish trust in the person speaking. So that's how ethos works in written text. Our next one would be pathos. And pathos is what exactly? Emotions, exactly, please. So somebody will read pathos for us. This is, you have to read it in your best Martin Luther King voice, because this is from the I Have a Dream speech. Somebody want to read this one for us?
Do we have to do
Alright, Jonathan, that'll work.
I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells, and some of you have come from areas where you quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of
Persecution.
and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith and that unearned suffering is redemptive. Back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed.
Okay, so Dr. King is appealing to emotions. He's trying to remind people of the church bombings and the lynchings and the cross burnings in Mississippi, in Alabama, South Carolina, places in the South where these sort of terrible incidents for the African American community happened. He's trying to engage their emotions to rally the cause rather of civil rights. So that would be an appeal to emotion. This last one, I have no idea. Like I said, I haven't really used this website. I have no idea who Ben Bernanke is, but apparently he wrote this, and I can read this one. So this would be an example of logos. So when we look for logos, what are some things we're looking for? Facts, numbers most likely. However, although private final demand, output, and employment have indeed been growing for more than a year, the pace of that growth recently appears somewhat less vigorous than we expected. Notably, since stabilizing in mid-2009, real household spending in the United States has grown in the range of 1 to 2% at annual rates, a relatively modest pace. Households' caution is understandable. Importantly, the painfully slow recovery in the labor market has restrained growth in labor income, raised uncertainty about job security and prospects, and damped confidence. Also, although consumer credit shows some signs of thawing, responses to our senior loan officer opinion survey on bank lending practices suggest that lending standards to households generally remain tight. So we have right here, he's talking about growth in the range of 1 to 2% at annual rates. He's talking about results they got from the survey. He's talking about numbers of recovery in the labor market. He's giving you facts, things that you can't really debate against, Because facts are pretty well set in stone, although you can sort of give the facts you want to give. But facts, for the most part, if they're accurate, are set in stone and they're really hard to argue against. So that would be an example of logos.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, like, the logos would be, like, statistics, would that be, like, an example?
Yeah, statistic. That's what.
So where it says 1 or 2%?
Right, 1 or 2%. That's an example of a statistic. He's throwing that in his argument to let you know, hey, logos. You can think the word logical. It's logical to believe this way because the numbers back it up. The numbers never lie. I don't know if you watch the show come by ESPN, but yeah, numbers never lie. So that's what's going on there. Now what I need everybody to do, we're going to transition to a little bit of a group activity, something that should be a little bit more fun than sitting here listening to me talk. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 6, 10, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20. Cool. I need you to you move your desks to do this. We need to be in 4 groups, 4 equal groups of 5 students. Okay? I'll let you choose your own groups. I trust you enough to let you do that. So I need us to get into 4 groups of 5 people. If you only have 3 people in your group and you see people and maybe you don't find somebody, this is for class. Invite them over. Let's get this taken care of here soon. Yes. Okay.
Oh, gee, the other day when you texted me, I was asleep.
We're not just writing about somebody who is.
I use this part. The upper part.
Hey, we'll talk about that more as we talk to each other. Alright, so yeah, let's move our desks. This is our 5 up here. Excellent. So with our 5 over here. Alright, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's gonna be? So that one's done. So now, this group of people needs divided into 2 groups of 5. I got 4 right there, 4 right here. So y'all just pair on, or move it around, however you decide to do it. It doesn't matter. You just move the desk. So that 5, 5, 5, 4. Oh, there you go. Yeah, yeah. Please give me that now. I'm confused. Yes, because somebody let you in there. I thought you had 5.
We did too.
Okay. Alright, so now what we're going to do is real quick. Okay. I'm going to give everybody in your group is going to get a handout. And understand that you're doing this as a group. So in theory, if everybody in your group is participating, everybody's paying attention, your results, which you put on your handout, should be all the same. I understand that, and that's okay. So you should be saying, is it okay if our answer is the same? Of course it is. You're going to be talking with each other and figuring things out. So I'm going to give you this handout, and here in a second I'm going to give each group 2 magazines. Each group will have a copy of Sports Illustrated. I've had a subscription to Sports Illustrated since I was in my 3rd grade. So everybody is going to get a copy of Sports Illustrated, and then you're going to get one other magazine that my mom gets in the mail, because I don't get any other magazines, Sports Illustrated. But I know some of you girls probably care very little about Sports Illustrated. This was like some other stuff in there thrown as well. I try to be fair about it. So what I want you to do is, if you look at your handout, you have your directions there, but I'm going to go ahead and talk you through them. Sure. I want you to go through the magazines, okay, and I want you to pick out 3 examples. It can be all 3 from one magazine, 2 from one from the other, wherever you decide to do it. And I want you to find 3 examples of a persuasive appeal. It could be an advertisement, most likely it will be in like a full-page advertisement. It could be an advertisement, it could be a short little write-up, what's known as a... What's that?
Persuasive is the...
Well, they're all persuasive appeal, but there's 3 different kinds. Ethos, pathos, and logos. Right, yeah, you can pick out any 3 that you want. It could be 2 pathos and 1 ethos. It could be all 3 logos. It's fine with me. I'm going to give you... So I'm going to give you a magazine. I want you to pick out 3 examples on your sheet. All right, everybody needs to listen to me real quick. On your sheet, it says, let's say selection 1, for example. You would write whatever the magazine is. So this one is Good Housekeeping with this girl on the front. So you write Good Housekeeping lady with president on the cover, so I know what magazine it is. It asks you what page number it is, so at the bottom, you find out what page number it is. Some of them, every page isn't marked, you gotta do a little bit of math. Tell me what page it is, tell me what the appeal is, ethos, pathos, or logos, circle it, and then as a group, you'll talk about it and explain to me in 2 or 3 sentences why that's an example of ethos, why that's an example of pathos, what have you. Does that make sense? Any questions?
No, sir. What have you?
If you do, yeah, no, everybody's gonna get one of each. Yeah, you can pass them around your group. If Sonora sees something cool, he can pause everybody and say, alright guys, look at this. They're all pretty recent. Yeah, they're all pretty recent. Will Chamberlain and March Madden. Oh, no, that's not Madden. They got March Madden. You get hockey. Y'all get Will Chamberlain. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, put number. Okay, so you're going to pick 3 selections of anything. Talk about them as a group. Maybe. It can be advertisements, it can be short little articles, whatever it is, anything that is persuasive, trying to get you to think a certain way, and tell me what it is. And I'll write up here just as a reminder of what we're doing. I would look more so at this one. So we read what it says right here. So she's also an Ivy League educated MBA who spent years making M&M's as successful chocolate brand it is today. Okay, so if they're telling you what what my educational experience is, all the things I've done in the past. Now this is sort of a joke, right? Because obviously this M&M did not go to Ivy League college. Okay. But a lot of advertisers are joking. But if they're she's trying to convince you of her expertise and all the things she's done in the past, which of these does that fit along with? Are we trusting stats? Are we trusting the person? Or are we trusting? Okay, why are we trusting? Why would it be ethos? Because you're right. First of all, so tell me why it would be ethos.
I haven't figured out what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yep, start writing it down. I'll be right there.
She's saying it like she's trying to make you believe her.
Yeah, she's trying to make you believe her how? What the things she's bringing up about herself.
Her education.
Exactly. Those are the sorts of things that make it an appeal to ethos. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That proves that even hockey fans.
Okay.
I would agree with this.
How would you what? First of all, let's don't do tobacco. Just because it's school and technically tobacco. So just do it different. There's plenty more in there for you to find. I promise. I promise.
See, I've already pointed out 3, but he's like, I'm not even interested in that.
Well, it's not necessarily the one you're interested in. It's can you pick out examples of these? That's what we want.
But if he wants to do them, he can.
And you got this magazine over here too. I mean, these girls and Dylan over here have already got one written down. So you might as well listen to what they're saying, figure out what they're doing. Okay, Vix. Don't let a cold take away dress up mommy.
So wouldn't it be passive?
Pathos, exactly. Why is it be pathos? What emotion are they trying to make you feel there? Or like, what are they using to make you feel a certain way? A cute little girl on the scene playing dress up with her mom. That's okay. Well, I mean, they're simple, but they're so they're trying to make you feel the love that between mother and child, aren't they? That would be the emotion they're trying to bring. But that's certainly, you're correct, that's certainly.
Mr. Bishop, can you come here for a second? Is this one we
Second,
can do?
go ahead. Huh?
Is this one we can do?
That's,
School
that's,
appropriate?
that's not an advertisement.
It could be.
I think it's like what you're saying.
Try to do something that's an advertisement. Not necessarily. So just keep trying to find an advertisement.
I'll try to convince Brian.
Just keep trying to find one. Yeah,
You don't know how to.
yeah, I mean, I read it cover to cover every week.
No. It's not
Well, you're not
really
reading. Okay, cool. Alright. So this slogan down here. New acts Apollo. Leave a man, come back a hero. Okay. So, you can wrote to discover the new scent of Axe Apollo. It's a scratch or a rub and sniff. It's not really a scratch and sniff. I guess, yeah, it says you can. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to.
Because it just
Smell it.
smells good.
Smell it.
Because
I ain't smelling that.
Alright. So we have right here, when they're trying to tell you, leave a man, come back a hero. If someone's like, Troy, you're a hero. Somebody says that to you. Are they giving you a statistic?
yeah.
Not necessarily. Is there any numbers involved?
No.
Okay. Would it be logical? So it wouldn't be logos, because it wouldn't
It'd
necessarily.
be the E word, ethos,
Maybe not necessarily ethos, but why would you say ethos?
because they're trying to present something that, like, you said medicine stuff,
Okay.
like in that doctor.
Well, it's not so much the fact that they're presenting medicine is what makes it ethos. What makes it ethos is the way it's trying to be sold.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Well, that's the way it's trying to be sold.
Yeah, well, see, no, I'm saying the person who's saying it, the person who's saying it is trying to convince you of his credibility. So if you have a doctor trying to sell you medicine, you would probably buy that medicine because the person who's telling you to buy it is a doctor. You trust him. You would vote for President Obama because of some of the things he said that made you trust President Obama. Okay, well that's right. You can't vote for anybody. You're not 18, so it don't matter. So that's what makes it ethos. This doesn't necessarily is ethos. I would tell you, I would consider this, personally, I would say this to be pathos. Because it's saying if you leave a man, it almost makes you seem like you're leaving ordinary. When you come back, you're a hero. It makes you feel good emotionally for people to say you're a hero, doesn't it? Okay, so they're trying to appeal to your emotions by making you think you're heroic if you use Axe Apollo spray and shampoo and body. Alright? S-Y-M-P. H, S-Y-M-P, H-H.
Oh, okay.
They're not trying to persuade you anything, they're just sort of giving you information. Most of them No, not necessarily, it can be all three pathos. How y'all got examples? Coming along pretty well? Y'all finding stuff? Can you stop? I don't know, it's about 30 after.
Brendan.
No, you got 15 minutes.
The whole class have to do? Until the bell.
Well, they're not reading bells this morning.
Till the fake bell.
Yeah, y'all got some. We got a couple. So whenever you mark them, don't just tell me that this logos. Don't just tell me that this logo is. Explain to me how it is. Explain like what's in the advertisement that makes you say that. If it's using numbers, facts, and figures, explain those numbers, those facts, and figures to me. Does that make sense? Don't just identify what it is. Explain to me how it is. What it is.
I think it said that you need to go.
Still got some stuff going on. New info. You could say just in general, Dr. Scholl's is no matter what his name is, doctor. So it's sort of, no matter what they do, that's going to go into what they're trying to say. He feels as a doctor. But specifically, we're looking at his tagline. The new info with triple zone protection. Then they give us this diagram down there that's showing us the facts. They reduce shock to the MOE, reduce shock by 40%. This is zone 1, this is zone 2. So which of those would that be an example of? Probably so. Just to clarify, you don't have to have one of these. You could have 3 pathos. You could have 2 ethos and 1 logo. That's fine. I just would find 3 examples of any of these being used. Shoulders again, just sit down.
I can't. If I talk behind it, it's gonna be like loud.
You don't care. Just say hi to her. Start preaching.
No, I'm not gonna do that. That's weird.
She doesn't care.
Okay.
You can sit down and just with this number, prop your arm up.